Did you
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, I almost hit the wrong button and left meeting. All right. I guess we are ready. I think it's 21 seconds on YouTube. So if we wait just a few seconds, we'll be starting out. So at this time, I am going to call the Grants and Reporting Committee meeting of today's date, and we will take roll call at this time.
All right. The Honorable Missy Maderi.
I am here.
The Honorable Sharon Keller.
Here.
The Honorable Sherry Reddick.
Here.
Judge, we have quorum.
All right, awesome. Let's go forward then. I don't have the next page, Doriana. You gotta give me key cards. There we go. All right, we're going to approve the minutes from last time. Do I have a motion on that?
So move.
Yes, I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Next item, or rather our first item up today is the approval of a slate of continuing grant awards that appears on page 6 and 7 of your meeting materials. These are all grants that have been previously approved by the full commission, and a funding plan was adopted either for sustainability funding or a step down standard improvement grants. So the recommended FY 2023 awards are in the second to the rightmost column. And there are 2 pages, 6 and 7, and we have a motion to adopt these continuing grants.
I move to adopt the continuing grant.
I second that motion. Well, actually, I'm going to abstain from Nueces County because they're on there for, is that the one where they're on for continuous?
Yes, that's
okay,
correct.
then I second for all except Nueces. I'm going to
Second on Nueces.
Thank you.
All right, and I guess we need a vote. We've got a motion and a second, so we just need a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, it passes.
Thank you. So next, we'll go to a grants overview on page 8, and Jeff will give us a kind of rundown of where we are today.
Thank you, Edwin. Yeah, if you look at page 8 of the meeting book, I'm just going to zoom way out and give a little bit of context for what we're talking about today. You'll remember that ARPA funding was awarded to the state of Texas, and TIDC initially applied for approximately $60 million or requested about $60 million in ARPA funds to help with the backlog. We did not receive $60 million. We received $14 million. So we realized today that the funds that we have aren't really sufficient to really help with the backlog all across the state. Having said that, we did advertise this opportunity for ARPA grant funding in several different ways that you see here. We posted it on the website. We pushed it out to all 254 counties. We did a webinar. We did targeted outreach to the 50 counties that have the highest backlogs. So there was pretty good saturation. I think most every county was aware of the opportunity. We received from that on the ARPA side 15 applications that we're going to be talking about today. For each of these applications, you'll see a short description as well as a staff recommendation and some notes about the external grant review committee and what they recommended. So that's half of what we're talking about today. The other half is the mental health funds. There is a rider on the TIDC budget that reserves part of our budget for mental health awards. So that's really what we're focused on today. If you remember, there was a special RFA that was released by TIDC that focused on just these 2 grant areas, the ARPA funding and the mental health. So I think that's what we're talking about today. Edwin, is there anything that you would add or to that?
No, so both of these types of grants that we're considering today have very fixed budgets based on either the legislative appropriation or the available funds in our mental health budget. And so we will have a handful of other sort of standard grants that will be presented to the full board at the June 9th meeting, but we're focusing on these 2 categories today.
And the one last thing I'd add is that specifically the things that we're talking about today, again, are ARPA funding and mental health funding. The things that we're not presenting today, because we need a little bit more time to vet those on the staff side, are Operation Lone Star supplemental funding. And we have about a handful of additional grant modifications or supplements that'll come up at the full board meeting. Last thing I'll mention in terms of ARPA funding, you'll see, and mental health funding, we received about actually a little bit more than twice the amount of grant funding requests as we have grant funding available. So we've worked really hard, and I really want to thank Edwin and Doriana and Scott and Kathleen. We've worked really hard to come up with recommendations that will make good use of those funds. And as you can see from those last 3 bullet points, we really have done a lot of work to try to scale back programs or phase in programs where possible to make the kind of stretch our dollar as much as we could. So I think that's it in terms of the grants overview, unless there are any questions from the members.
I have no
Okay.
questions.
We can proceed to a kind of overview chart on page 10. And real quickly, my son just picked up his high school yearbook and it had an insert that said, please forgive any errata. We worked really hard and did our best. And I would say the same to you all here. There are a couple of minor errors on this sheet, but the errors are the totals of the requested amounts that you see in the second to the rightmost column. The figure, the total backlog grants that we received actually totaled to 29,461,000, not 8.7 million. And then the total mental health requests that we received totaled 8.47 million. So everything else is correct there. But you see that we basically have 3 categories. The grant application we received from Nueces County kind of straddles both categories. So they're applying for both pandemic-related backlog funds and the mental health funds. So we've kind of broken out the components of that combined program and then highlighted those in gray in each of the categories below. So total pandemic related backlog grant requests around 29.5 million. We're recommending today approval of about 12.8 million. Again, the budget is 13.9, so that's keeping a little bit in reserve, and we'll talk about that proposal shortly. And then on the mental health side, we're recommending approval of all the remaining mental health funds, which is 3.248 million in that pot of money. And we can take these up one by one, but I just wanted to provide you with a chart that gives you an overview of where we stand. Okay, Brianna, do you want to get us started with our first one?
Sure, thank you, Edwin. Okay, everyone. So the first request we have is from B County on page 11. So B County is seeking grant funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 2 full-time employees. That's 1 attorney and 1 investigator. This is a 4-county rural regional public defender office, which includes B, Live Oak, McMullen, and Refugio counties, and it's operated by the Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. And the recommendation is to award B County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $401,880. Edwin?
And that request basically funds an attorney and an investigator in this program for 2 years. And again, all of the proposals that are presented in line with the request for applications that we issued would be for 2-year awards. And so the total award here is $401,880 for 2 years to help the B regional program chip away at its backlog. We've reviewed the statistics through the Office of Court Administration regarding the backlog and confirmed all that information. And the program definitely has a well-supported need here, so we would recommend that approval.
So I just have a quick question before we go on. So this is for just the backlog 2-year. If there is any step down program, that will be mentioned in there as well. Is that correct, Edwin?
That's correct. So unless we specifically note otherwise, all of these recommendations and requests are for 2 years only at the full funding that was advertised in the request for applications. There are a handful of grants where we are suggesting or recommending that we, upon completion of the initial pandemic-related grant, we pivot or transition to a standard step-down grant, but we'll note that explicitly when that's applicable. So this is a temporary 2-year program that kind of stands on its own.
All right. Well, I just opened to my phone so I can make that motion to recommend a new award of $401,880 to B County for public defender staffing increase to address the case backlog.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, it passes. Congratulations, B County. All right, let's move on to the next one, Edwin. Or Dorian.
Brianna?
Sure. Our next request is out of Brazos County. They are seeking grant funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by building the Brazos County Public Defender Office, which includes 13 full-time employees. Let me scroll down a little bit. The recommendation is to award Brazos County a scaled back 2-year pandemic related backlog reduction grant of $1,859,900 and to adopt a funding plan to transition the program to a standard step down improvement grant after the initial 2-year grant. Edwin?
Yeah, so as you can see from the chart at the top, the original proposal for the 2-year project was just about 3.2 million. We're recommending 1.859 million. It's a very good program. We've looked at their very compelling need for attorneys. They've had a lot of attrition in the attorneys that are available to take indigent cases in this region. In fact, this is a theme we've been hearing from across the state, and you'll hear it again today. So they have a very compelling need that's been exacerbated by the backlog. The proposal here includes a phase-in, as you can see, where basically 50% of the operation would be staffed up for the first year and then transitioning to a larger operation, which is still scaled back from the original request. That's essentially to try to get a good program in place while meeting our available funds or operating within our available funds. So we had some good feedback, very strong feedback from our external grant review committee about this proposal. And you can see that we've scaled it back from 13 to 10 FTEs or employees. The other thing that we did was, because the budget, the point of departure that we suggested to the county was to, rough parity with their prosecutors' offices on just as kind of a starting point for getting some budget figures together. In looking at the budget, there were a number of items that were really more associated with that side of the system than the defense side. And so we did make some adjustments to their proposed budget, quite significant ones, to align with the kind of standard programs that we would fund in our TIDC program. So with that, we do have a recommendation to fund for a 2-year award of $1.859,900.
All right.
Second.
I guess that was your motion, Edwin?
I'm sorry, I'll read the motion. The motion
Yeah.
is to recommend a new award of $1,859,900 to Brazos County for a public defender office to address case backlog and to transition the program to a standard step-down improvement grant after the initial 2 years.
Second.
I guess we'll make the motion and then second, or everybody in favor, please say aye.
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 Thank you. We can proceed to page 13.
All right. On page 13, we have a request from Burleson County. They are seeking grant funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 1 contract attorney. So the county experienced a 37% increase in active pending felonies, and the recommendation is to award Burleson County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $98,102. Edwin?
So Burleson County reached out. They were somewhat interested in investigating a public defender program, didn't have time to really build consensus and fully explore that, but they do have a very significant need in the short run. They currently operate a contract program and are just asking for a little bit of extra help to add a contract attorney. So that's pretty straightforward.
I'll move to award Burleson County 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $98,102.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Next item is on page 14.
The next request is from Culberson County. Culberson County is seeking grant funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 1 attorney and 1 investigator. So that's 2 FTEs. The county requested 3 years of funding. However, the recommendation is to award Culberson County a scaled back 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $432,748. Edwin?
And as y'all will recall, we helped the 5 counties out east of El Paso to create this program a few years ago. It's been very successful at transforming indigent defense out there. They have a compelling need because a number of trials have really backed up in the system. So while the courts were able to get a lot of business addressed, obviously they were not able to hold very many trials. So during the pandemic. So the amount of trials that are facing the office is really quite daunting right now. And that's the most compelling aspect, I think, of their request. Their caseloads in general have been inching up significantly. And I think that's also been exacerbated by the backlog. So I think this is a pretty straightforward expansion of an existing public defender to meet these new needs.
So Edwin, on the year 3 review, is that for us to possibly go into a step down on that?
So yeah, because the program explicitly asked for 3 years of full funding, we felt that because the RFA was explicit about offering 2 years of full funding, to be fair to all the applicants, we couldn't really consider that. The program is currently on a sustainability grant program, sustainability grant funding rather. And so under normal circumstances, if the need for these positions continues after the 2 years, we would be recommending to you that they either be, that you could consider a county request for full funding for an additional year as a special exception, or to transition them to the sustainability grant that funds the balance of their program.
Okay, thank you. Can you call for that vote, Edwin?
So we have a motion to recommend a new award of $432,748 to Culberson County. It's a 2-year award for a public defender staffing increase to address the case backlog.
So move.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Next on page 15, Doriana.
Thanks, Edwin. The next request is out of Dallas County. Dallas County seeks grant funding to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by adding 21 full-time employees, which includes 14 attorneys. According to OCA data, active pending misdemeanor cases rose 61%, which is one of the largest pandemic-related backlogs in our state right now. And the recommendation is to reduce full-time employees from 21 to 19, and to award Dallas County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $3,487,680. Edwin?
So the need here is very well documented and supported by OCA data on their case backlog. But beyond that, TIDC has been aware of Dallas County Public Defender's very high caseloads in their misdemeanor division. The pandemic has really exacerbated a very serious problem that existed there already. And I think that this presents a very unique opportunity to provide some assistance to the county to not only address the backlog more effectively, but to really kind of move in a direction where they can have a more sustainable misdemeanor public defender program. Right now, they're completely overwhelmed with too many cases. We did pare this back from the original request. They had asked for 21 employees. We pared it back to 19, and we're also proposing a phase-in. That's a pretty significant amount of folks to hire up. And so realistically, we think that 50% of the reduced budget should be funded in year 1, followed by the full amount of the reduced budget in year 2. We also are proposing to put some grant conditions on this award based on the feedback we received from our external committee, which, by the way, is very supportive of this program. We thought that tracking the time of this new staff was going to be important. Making sure that we were tracking the number of cases in a way that was provided more clarity in terms of workload, and that's what's meant by annualized caseloads. And then including some specialized training on workloads and quality misdemeanor representation.
So Edwin, in light of the fact that it's a 2-year program,
Mhm.
correct?
Yes.
And it's a phase in, will they be able to use all that money?
Well, what we've done is proposed a budget where half of the money is granted in the first year, and then the full amount of the reduced budget is granted in the second year. So the way that we've tried to structure this would allow them to access the full amount of the proposed award. in this time frame. Whereas if we just approved the full amount, they wouldn't really have time. So we've taken that into account.
Edwin, do you happen to know how many attorneys work at the Dallas County PD now?
Don't know the overall staffing. I know that what is proposed in this program is essentially to add one misdemeanor attorney to each of the misdemeanor courts that the public defender is currently serving. So, and then to add a couple of supervisors, supervising attorneys to that division. So, but I can't say that I know the total number of employees in the program.
I was
But
just
this is-
wondering how, kind of what this does. Does it double the number? But that's okay.
Yeah, and
Thank
Judge,
you.
I can speak to it a little bit. I
Okay.
haven't looked, I apologize, this is off the top of my head. I haven't looked at their numbers for probably 6 months or so. This does for the misdemeanor division roughly double their staffing. But if you add up their misdemeanor division, their capital division, their felony division, their appellate division, it's quite a bit larger than that. I know that they have a total of over 100 FTEs.
Thank you, Jeff.
Sure.
So we do have a motion here if you all are ready, or if you have any questions.
Yeah, Jeff, I'm sorry, Edwin, I have a quick question. So, and this goes for all of them, when are the fees droppable into, when do each of these counties get their check, basically?
Also, the grants are all offered on a reimbursement basis, but basically the funds are available immediately. So as soon as I and our staff can get the paperwork out to the counties, they can begin to move forward. But essentially, all the grants that are considered today, the counties can begin as soon as we can get the paperwork in their hands, which is probably about a week, maybe 10 days.
But, well, I mean, we got to go to the full board first,
Oh,
right?
of course. I apologize. I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself. Forgive
I
me.
know. And our full board meeting is June
9th.
9th. Okay,
Yes.
all right.
So once an award is finally approved by the full commission, which will meet on June 9th, we would need about a week to 10 days to get the grant paperwork issued to the counties, and they can begin spending as soon as any time after that.
All right, thank you. You want to read that motion for us,
Sure.
Jeff? Edwin, I don't have it in front of me.
So we have a motion to recommend a new award of a 2-year award of $3,487,680 to Dallas County for public defender staffing increase to address the case backlog with grant conditions listed on page 15 of the meeting notebook.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Second it.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right, passes. Congrats, Dallas. All right, let's go to the next one, El Paso.
Our next request is out of El Paso County. El Paso County seeks grant funding to reduce its pandemic-related felony backlog by adding 11 full-time employees, which includes 5 attorneys, 3 mitigation specialists, 1 investigator, 1 secretary, and 1 receptionist. The recommendation is to scale back the award by reducing FTEs to 3 felony attorneys, and to award El Paso County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog grant in the amount of $1,057,850. Edwin?
So our reviewers are supportive of the program. El Paso clearly has a need that's supported by the data that we've independently checked. There are a couple of factors. I mean, because we were prioritizing among many worthy applications, we did feel the need to scale this one down to meet existing resources. But we do believe that the need is well supported. So we're proposing three felony attorneys that would be rather senior felony attorneys that could provide assistance with a lot of the trials that they are facing, because they do have kind of an increased number of trials in particular that they're looking at on the felony side. But this is all directed toward felonies. And if there are no questions, I'll read the motion. So we have a motion to recommend a new award for 2 years of $1,057,850 to El Paso County for public defender staffing increases to address the case backlog.
So move.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Hi.
All right. So our next request is out of Fort Bend County. Fort Bend is seeking grant funding to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by adding a part-time clerk, so one full-time employee. Let's see, according to OCA data, Fort Bend's active pending felonies increased by 23%. And the county also saw a modest increase in active pending misdemeanors. And the recommendation is to award Fort Bend County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $62,456. Edwin?
So this is obviously a rather small request considering the other ones. We did have this before you back in March before we decided to hit the pause button and allow all the other counties more of an opportunity to apply. What happened in Fort Bend is that the county got some federal ARPA funding directly from the federal government and used some of that to add an attorney for the Fort Bend County Public Defender to help them address the backlog. However, the county did not receive the associated administrative support person that it needed as well through the county's pass-through of federal funds. So this is kind of a supplemental request in that context. It's relatively small. The county is facing a significant backlog. And what we really told the indigent defense programs around the state was to let us know where we can be most helpful in this backlog area. And in the case of Fort Bend, because they got the attorney from the county already, they just need a little bit of extra administrative support in the public defender office. So our reviewers thought that in that context, this was a compelling request and endorsed it. And so we are proposing a 2-year award of $62,456 for a part-time public defender administrative support.
I'll move to do that.
I'll second that.
So the motion would be for to recommend a new award for 2 years of $62,456 to Fort Bend County for public defender staffing increases to address the case backlogs.
All right, I think Judge Keller made the motion. I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all. Page 15 is next.
All right, our next request is out of Harris County. They are seeking grant funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 3 attorneys, so 3 full-time employees. According to OCA data, active pending misdemeanor cases rose by 37% in the pandemic, and the recommendation is to award Harris County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog grant in the amount of $1,119,000. Edwin?
So relatively small increase for the county with the largest backlog. It is a very, the statistics are daunting. This is what they felt they could use. And so our external reviewers agreed that there was a need and that this would be of some help to the county and recommended it.
Oh, it's not pared back.
This one is not pared back. They requested 3 attorneys and that was what was recommended.
Okay.
Edwin, I noticed that the summary from the External Grant Review Committee says that much of the bottleneck in Harris County lies with other criminal court stakeholders, and I've heard the same thing. Mm-hmm. And I just wonder, I'm not opposed to this, but I just wonder whether it's going to make a difference if if the bottleneck is elsewhere.
Somewhere else.
And I wonder, yeah.
Yeah, and where is that bottleneck, Edwin, with the other stakeholders?
Well, according to some conversations with some of our reviewers, there's, the courts have been overwhelmed, or I think the court, it's a judicial bottleneck in many cases. That is part of the problem. And as we've discussed in previous meetings, where there is a pandemic-related backlog, it's not always the defense function that could, is the bottleneck, and sometimes it's complicated. But the numbers in Harris County are very significant, and certainly, while this is, I think this adding 3 FTEs to Harris County is very small in the overall context, but according to the county, they believed that this would be helpful to them in moving cases forward. I think it's clearly a very, very partial response, but it is a response that I think, from the defense side was recommended.
Well, I know or I understand that OCA also has ARPA funds that they're awarding for other purposes. And I know that Jeff and Megan were going to make sure that they coordinated these awards. I wonder if we could get some more information from OCA before we decide whether to move forward on this request, to see if there's if by coordinating our efforts, we really can make a difference, or whether we're just beating our head against a wall by sending money to address where the problem is not.
Yeah, Judge, I should, that's a good point. I should get a list, I think today or tomorrow, from the Office of Court Administration on what counties they've been working with. And we can certainly coordinate that. And if you'd like, we could bring this back to the full board next week after we have that data, if that'd be helpful.
So I can jump in here. I know the PJs, we're having a meeting to talk about those funds, and that will be this Friday. So we'll meet with the presiding judges and OCA on Friday to discuss the ARPA funds.
I think it would be helpful to me to have a bigger more of a big picture view of what's going on in Harris County and where they need help.
Okay. We can certainly do that. Yeah, if that's the will of the committee, we'll go ahead and do that research and speak with OCA, wait to see what the presiding judges say, and bring that back to the full board next week if that works. I think that makes good sense.
So do you need a motion to table this or just not make the motion?
I think we can just proceed and we'll present it again at the full board meeting on the 9th.
All right,
That would
thank
be
you.
my preference. I don't want to speak for anyone else though.
I think that's a great idea, Judge Keller.
Okay.
Okay, so we will hold off on any recommendation regarding the Harris County request for now, and we'll revisit this at the board meeting with some more information about some of the other funds available for the judiciary that might be out there.
I will say this, I don't think the amount, I don't have it off the top of my head, but it's like, God, I want to say $7 million that OCA has in ARPA funds. And I know that there have been lots of requests going in. So but they think they might be able to find some more money. It's still kind of up in the air. So I guess we'll see more on Friday.
Judge, your recollection is accurate. I think what I've heard from OCA is $7 million worth of funds and a lot of demands on those funds. I think that's right.
So I think that our committee was, I think, largely responding to the overall backlog numbers. And, because it's very difficult for us to get any kind of precise visibility over, especially in very large jurisdictions, over, exactly what those bottlenecks are, but that the county had such an overwhelming backlog that's where this recommendation was originating. So we will bring that back to you with more information. And I guess we can go on to page 19 next.
All right, on page 19, we have a request from Hidalgo County. Hidalgo County is seeking a 2-year grant of $197,882 to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 2 backlog coordinators at the Hidalgo County Jail. And the recommendation is to not award funding at this time for this program. Edwin?
So I have a question, Edwin. Well, go ahead, Edwin, and I'll ask after you're done.
Well, no, please go ahead, Judge.
Well, I had noticed, and that was one of my first questions after going through this notebook, was to say, that we still have held back like $1 million, I think it is. And so I guess I'm trying to figure out, I guess maybe you'll tell us why we're holding those back. And it seems like a small grant for Hidalgo. So I guess I'm trying to figure out why the not funding on this.
Sure.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, Judge, that's a really good question. Why are we kind of keeping some powder dry? So the vast majority of the funds we're recommending that they be awarded now. That question is maybe a little bit different from the Hidalgo County question. So I'll talk about Hidalgo first, and then talking about why our recommendation is to keep some of the hold off on some of the funding out the door. Hidalgo County, there are a couple issues with this grant that popped up. One is that what they're recommending are 2 folks staffing the jail. And so one of the big concerns that I think staff and the external reviewers had is that it's outside of our statutory mandate in terms of funding, that it's not really funding an indigent defense function. That was, I think, concern one with Hidalgo. The second concern with Hidalgo, unlike every other grant that we're going to be talking about today, those two positions actually already exist in Hidalgo as temporary positions right now. So there's a supplanting issue as well. Normally, if there's a position that already exists, the state can't come back in and then fund that same position. So those were two reasons that there were a lot of concerns among staff and the external reviewers about funding this particular project. One, because they're jail staff, and two, the supplanting issue. So it's a little bit different from that second issue which we brought up, which is why keep some of the powder dry? Why is there about $1 million that we're proposing to not get out the door today? And a lot of that has to do with a grant that we're going to be talking about a little bit later, which is Victoria County, where they have a really pretty significant backlog. They've got a really good case for needing to build a public defender office, but as we'll talk about a little bit later, there's a little bit more legwork to be done, I think, before that office is ready to go.
Right. This the Hidalgo program, I would just add, the way it was described, it's essentially kind of facilitating communication between attorneys and incarcerated defendants. These folks have been deputized by the clerk's office to certify plea paperwork remotely, and those kinds of functions. It's kind of operating as a deputy clerk in some ways. I think just to kind of reiterate part of what Jeff was saying, there was just a lot of concern about the extent to which this squarely fit into our program, and it just seemed like it was kind of a little bit outside the lines of what normally would happen, in addition to the supplanting issue, which is a technical grant issue. So we don't have any recommendation on that. If there aren't any other questions, I would move forward. On page 20, Oriana.
All right, so on page 20, we have a request from Taylor County. Taylor County is seeking grant funds to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by building the Big Country Regional Public Defender Office, which will include 36 full-time employees. The recommendation is to reduce the full-time employees and budget to 25% of the proposed levels. And the recommendation is to award Taylor County a pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of up to $1,872,430 and adopt a funding plan to transition the program to sustainability funding. Edwin?
So I had the chance to talk with the Taylor County stakeholders quite a bit in recent months. And as you can see, the most compelling thing that is happening there is the attorney attrition. They simply do not have enough lawyers in this region of the state to meet indigent defense needs. And so that is a very big part of, and of course, that has been very much associated with the pandemic and exacerbated by it. And in addition, they do have a significant backlog, not so much showing up in the filed cases data from OCA, but in the complaints that are pending for presentation to the grand jury. There's when you look at the statistics of the number of cases that are in the pipeline, there's a dramatic uptick. So that we are confident that the backlog is there, and this would be a good investment toward it. You can see that basically the proposal, now this is a 5-county region, and I think one of the most attractive things about this project is that Taylor County, which includes Abilene as the county seat, would be bringing in a lot of rural neighbors into the program and providing them with access to much more robust and reliable services. The small counties have had it even worse in terms of getting coverage in their courts. We've proposed paring it back to about 25% of the what I'll call the whole enchilada that was put into the request. The request would cover basically all non-conflict indigent defense cases in the 5-county region. We're proposing just to meet available resources and to get them started with about a quarter of that. So that would be a footprint of about 9 staff, including attorneys and support staff. What else to say about Taylor? I think that covers the main point. The county does wish to be considered for transition to sustainability funding. The default kind of threshold for eligibility for sustainability funding is $100,000. The board back when we approved a sustainability grant for Tom Green County, which was a 7-county regional PD, their population was similar. It was a little less, but I think it was about 120,000 or so. And the board made an exception to that 100K threshold for eligibility for sustainability funding, in large part because the program was bringing in 7 counties in the region and really serving as a very vital hub for indigent defense services. Similarly, Taylor County would be serving the same function. And so that would require some variance from that default threshold, but I think that still would be appropriate given the commission's practices recently. So if there are any questions or?
Yeah, so Edwin, yeah, I have a question, I'm sorry. So this is one where they asked for all of the mental health public defender's office, and because of the scale back, what is the percentage of mental health cases that Taylor County will handle now?
Well, so this is actually not a mental health specific program, Judge. This was just related to their overall indigent defense caseload. So,
okay, and what they asked for was what, and what they are getting is what? So
they asked for a total program, 2-year budget program of 7.5 million, and we're recommending 1.9 million, rounding a bit. So we're scaling that back to 25% roughly of their proposal. So this would essentially provide coverage for 25% of their indigent defense caseloads instead of essentially all of it.
I gotcha. Thank you.
So 1 in 4 cases.
Thank you, Edwin.
Judge, if I could add just one thing, one of the things is, we've been talking to a lot of counties about backlogs lately, Edwin and Scott in particular. And this is one county we just wanted to applaud. If you look at that first paragraph, the very last line, they were really doing some acrobatics to try to keep their backlog down. They actually were recruiting attorneys from Fort Worth, 150 miles away, knowing that that was a temporary measure. But really, they were trying to keep their finger, keep their finger in the dam and try to keep all this from washing over them. So this is a county where if you look, I think, at the OCA data on their backlog, there is a backlog, but it doesn't look nearly as sizable as it would because they really, again, did some backflips here, some acrobatics to get attorneys from hundreds of miles away to come and take cases. So we just wanted to thank them for all their work. And yeah, what Edwin said, I think there's a real need here.
All right, thank you. Edwin, can you read that for us?
Sure. So we have a motion to recommend a new award to Taylor County for a regional public defender office to address the case backlog and transition program and to adopt a funding plan to transition the program to sustainability funding after the initial 2 years. And that's the motion. I'm sorry. The motion is for $1,872,430.
All right, I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, thank you. Congratulations, Taylor County.
Thank you all.
All right.
Page 21.
Our next request is from Travis County. Travis County is seeking a 2-year grant of $375,820 to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by adding 2 full-time employees and creating a client research and communication team. Reviewers support Travis County's request, but mark it as a low funding priority, and the recommendation is to not award a pandemic-related grant to Travis. Edwin?
So yeah, the TIDC has funded Travis County to create the capital area private defender service some years back. We've made a couple of grants in recent years to expand the MAC, including adding some mental health social workers and to expand their services. In addition, TIDC has invested heavily in the new Travis County Public Defender Office. And in the context of, I think, a lot of the recent investments in Travis, it was hard to move this up on the priority list. Also, it's a sort of novel approach that is suggested here. And while I'm sure it could make a positive difference, it was just down on the list in terms of prioritization. And so that's why we don't have a recommendation to move forward on this at this time. Any further discussion before we move on?
Okay, our next request is out of Victoria County. Victoria County is seeking grant funding of $4,045,958 to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by building a public defender office, which will include 26 full-time employees. The recommendation is to postpone action on Victoria County's request, with several counties seeking to leave or join TRLA this year. TIDC would benefit from additional time and research to determine whether funds should be invested in creating this office for Victoria. Edwin?
Jeff, did you want to speak more to this, or?
Sure,
before
I can jump in on this. I spoke just yesterday with the county judge in Victoria, Ben Zeller, and we've worked very closely with them. There clearly is a need here. So there really isn't a question about that. They are talking to Texas Rio Grande Legal Aid. They're hoping to contract with them. As we'll talk more about at the board meeting, you'll see a lot of grant modifications related to TRALA offices. We have some counties leaving TRALA. We have some counties that want to join TRALA. We have other counties that are TRALA counties that are asking for additional assistance. Our hope on the staff side was really just waiting for the dust to settle on a lot of that movement, to see where TRALA's budgets are, and to see what counties are involved at TRALA at that point. So our recommendation, we really don't want to take this off the table because, again, I think there is a need in Victoria County. But before we invest a sizable amount of money, we wanted to see how the dust settles with all the TRALA counties and perhaps bring this back to you all in August, if that's okay with the committee.
I would also just add that we've been working with Victoria County for about 5 years now on this program. We've had a couple of a long series of meetings with the judges and other stakeholders in the area. They've been very good to collaborate with, and just trying to find a way to make it work. So that's where we are today. I think it's a program we would very much like to move forward on, if we can.
All right, thanks, Edwin. You want to go on to the next one?
Sure. Page 23 is next. We're making good time. Brianna?
Yeah, thank you, Edwin. Our next request is out of Wichita County. They are seeking funding to reduce the pandemic-related backlog by adding 1 attorney and 2 investigators, so 3 full-time employees. And the recommendation is to reduce it to 1 attorney and 1 investigator, and award Wichita County a 2-year pandemic-related backlog grant in the amount of $316,172. Edwin?
So Wichita County's Public Defender Office has been a very effective program. They've been working with TIDC for many years, and we feel confident that this is a good investment. The statistics support it. The external reviewers agreed, and they did point out that some of the proposed metrics for evaluating the program were a bit vague in the application. That's something that we on the staff side would work with the county on if an award is approved, to make sure that we are tracking all the work that would be done by the additional staff carefully to make sure we measure the impact. We did pare this one back a bit to 1 attorney and 1 investigator for the 2-year program at $316,172. And so we do have a motion to recommend a new award of a 2-year award of $316,172 to Wichita County Public Defender staffing increases to address case backlogs.
So moved.
Second. All right, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank y'all. Page 24 is next.
All right, our next request is from Willacy County. Willacy County is seeking funding to reduce its pandemic-related backlog by adding 1 attorney and 1 investigator to its public defender office. The recommendation is to remove the indirect expense estimate and align with the TRLA submitted budget, and to award Willacy County a pandemic-related backlog reduction grant of $401,880. Edwin?
So this is a very straightforward expansion of a current public defender program. 1 attorney, 1 investigator. The statistics support the backlog statistics support the increase, and our external reviewers agreed that it would be a good investment. This is, and I'll leave it at that.
All right, you want to read that motion for us,
Sure.
Edwin?
So the motion is to recommend a new award of two-year award of $401,880 to Williston County for public defender staffing increases to address the case backlog.
All right, I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, motion passes.
Thank you all. So next one is on page 25, and I'll just note here that all the ones that we've been addressing so far have been purely related to the special RFA regarding backlog reduction grants. As I mentioned at the outset, the Nueces County request is a sort of hybrid that would be drawing upon pandemic funds as well as the mental health defender restricted funds. And so it kind of straddles the two categories, and we're moving into the mental health division or set of requests now with Nueces. So Toriana, you want to just give it a layout?
Thank you, Edwin. So this is, again, a hybrid request. Nueces County is seeking mental health and pandemic-related backlog reduction grant funding to establish the Nueces County Public Defender Office, the NCPDO, which includes 34 full-time employees. The recommendation is to scale back the full-time employees and budget to approximately half to meet available funds, and to work with the county to refine the budget and develop a phased implementation. So the recommendation is to award Nueces County a 2-year grant of up to $3,641,458 as itemized in our meeting book, and adopt a funding plan to transition the program to a standard step-down improvement grant following the initial grant term of 2 years. Edwin?
I think that Nueces County worked very closely with TIDC. Scott Ehlers and Kathleen Casey Gomez worked with them, and a number of our other staff members worked with them on a very detailed planning study that investigated the feasibility of a public defender, modeled the staffing that would be needed. And so I think that this application, perhaps more than any of the others on the table today, reflects a very deep involvement of TIDC staff in the planning and budgeting. We have a very high degree of confidence in that. I think also, I would say that, Jeff mentioned we asked the legislature for about $60 million. We got 14. I think if we got the 60, this would be a no-brainer, and we would be recommending that we fully fund the proposal. However, we did scale back as described in order to meet existing resources. We think it's a very good investment. The county's been very good to work with, and I think is highly motivated to make some big changes that would be very impactful in the community. We've looked at the statistics on mental defendants with mental illness. The need is definitely here and the program would not be able to serve all defendants. There would have to be some kind of criteria because we would only be able to fund probably about 45% of the mental health side of the indigent defense caseload, and about half of the proposed 25% caseload, so about 12 or 13% of sort of regular indigent defense cases. And we would be working closely with the county to refine that plan before implementation.
That's
So
a good
I'm-
investment.
Yeah, thank you. I'm just going to jump on here and then anyone else can discuss. I mean, obviously Nueces County is my home county. So I am going to recuse myself from all voting. I just wanted to make that for the record.
Thank you, Judge. Jeff or Scott, do you want to add anything that I didn't touch on?
No, just two things real quick. One is if you look at the largest counties in Texas, the top 30, 40, 50, I don't think you're going to see a county that has a larger backlog percentage-wise than Nueces County. And for that reason, I think to a person, the external reviewers rank this as their highest priority. So there's a definite need here.
Well,
Any other discussion?
I will move to, I'm not looking at the motion, so I can't see what it is, but
I'll read it for you, Judge, if you'd like. There's a motion to recommend a new 2-year award of up to $3,641,458 to Nueces County for a new public defender office and transition the program to a standard step-down improvement grant after the initial 2 years.
so move.
I would heartily second that, and we'll vote for it.
And I'll vote for it too.
Thank you all.
And I will say congratulations to Nueces County.
Right.
Thank you.
So now we're transitioning to grants that are specifically related to mental health defender programs. And there's just a relatively short list. And as I said, we're moving through this quite well. So page 26, Dorian.
Thank you, Edwin. On page 26, we have the request from Bexar County. They are seeking mental health grant funding to establish the Bexar County Managed Assigned Council Mental Health Division, which includes 8 full-time employees, 1 attorney, 1 social worker, 4 case managers, 1 program manager, and 1 data analyst. And the recommendation is to reduce the full-time employees from 8 to 3, so that'd be 1 attorney, 1 social worker, and 1 case manager, and to award Bexar County a 2-year mental health defender grant of $769,669 and adopt a funding plan to transition the program to a standard step-down improvement grant, and to fund the data analyst position out of our regular improvement grant funds. Edwin?
So I think that the program is very solid. The proposal is very well thought out, and the reviewers agreed. The issue of the data analyst was that because these funds are restricted by the legislature for mental health defender programs in particular, we thought that data analyst was going to be more broadly reviewing data and doing some research related to the new MAC program in Bexar County as a whole. So while we think that that's a good idea to have that position, we think that it's better funded out of our regular grant budget as opposed to the restricted mental health fund. So that we are setting that aside for the moment. We'll bring that back to you on June 9th if you're willing to consider that. We did pare it back, as Doriana mentioned, pretty substantially, again, just given the limited resources that are available currently. But the need is clearly there. I think scaling it back made sense in light of some of the other programs that are in Bexar County, and that in some ways more is almost always better, or often better. But in this case, we think that this will make a very positive difference for the program.
So Edwin, is this Jim Bethke's handiwork?
So the new director of the Bexar County MAC is Mr. Bethke, and I believe some of you are familiar with him. And yes, he's at the helm there, and really getting a good program together.
Edwin, I'm just curious. They asked for less money in the year 2, and the proposal is to award them less. Why are they asking for less money?
The year 2 budget goes down a bit because the year 1 budget includes startup costs like computers, telephone desk, things like that. So we back out that startup budget in the second year.
Thank you.
And that's true for most all of them. So if there are no more discussion about this, we do have a motion. Should I go for it? The motion is to recommend a new award of $769,669 to Bexar County for Mental Health Division at the Managed Assigned Council Program, and transition the county to a standard step-down improvement grant after the initial 2 years.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Thank you all. Page 27 is next.
Our next request is from Culberson County. Culberson is seeking a mental health grant funding to expand the Far West Texas Public Defender Office by adding 1 full-time employee, which is an entry-level social worker. And the recommendation is to award Culberson County a 2-year mental health defender grant of $160,698 and to transition the Far West Texas RPDO or transition to the Far West Texas RPDO sustainability funding. Edwin?
As we talked about, this is a 5-county region that's been a game changer in that part of the state. In addition to the lack of indigent defense resources prior to our investment in this program, the region in general has a dearth of resources available for defendants with mental illness. And so I think in the case for adding an additional social worker that would be focused on defendants with mental health challenges was particularly compelling. The reviewers supported it, especially considering that aspect of it. It would have downstream budget impacts in the sense that it would be, we're proposing that it would be folded in to the sustainability grant in the out years. However, before we followed through with that, with doing so, we would present it to you after reviewing the impact of the program, the expanded program. And with that, any questions or further discussion before I read the motion? So we have a motion to recommend a new award of $160,698 to Culberson County for a 2-year mental health defender grant and transition to the Far West Texas RPDO sustainability funding following the initial grant.
All right,
So moved. I'll second.
all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you all.
Aye.
Page 28 is next. Toriana.
All right, on page 28, we have a request from Hidalgo County. Hidalgo County is seeking mental health grant funds to create a mental health unit at the Hidalgo County Public Defender Office, which includes 1 attorney, 1 social worker, 1 mental health indigent defense coordinator. And the recommendation is to reduce the FTEs from 3 to 2 and to award Hidalgo County a 2-year mental health defender grant of $369,050 to fund an attorney and a social worker for the Public Defender Office mental health unit. Edwin?
So it's interesting that a lot of folks, reviewers and even staff, don't think of Hidalgo County as one of the big Texas counties, but it is by population one of the largest counties in the state. And they have no mental health defender programs that's kind of specific for serving this population of clients. So I think that this would definitely make a very positive difference for the community and for the Public Defender Office in Hidalgo County. We did scale it back a bit. They had also requested a kind of a dedicated indigent defense coordinator for the mental health cases. Again, just looking hard at the priorities and the, with all of the applications taken together, we did recommend pulling out that position because we thought it was less essential, but that the attorney social worker team would do a lot of good in that office. If there's aren't any questions or further discussion about Hidalgo, I'll read a motion that to recommend a new award of $369,050 to Hidalgo County for a mental health defense unit at the Public Defender Office.
So move.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right, passes.
Thank you all. We have two.
Wait, I'm sorry. Can I go back? You know what? As 5th Region PJ, Hidalgo is in my county. I should probably not vote on that, so I'm going to recuse on that as well.
Okay.
Well,
Unless you all don't think that I need to, Judge Keller, Judge. Should I?
I don't know, but there are 2 votes for it anyway. Do we
Okay.
need to go over the vote again?
Yeah, I'll just recuse then, and then if we can take a vote, I think we had a motion and a second, so I think it passes without my vote.
Right.
Okay, that's fine. And Wesley is our resident expert on the details regarding those rules. We can certainly touch base with him before the full board meeting to confirm whether or not that's strictly necessary. But as you all point out, I think we're fine for now.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you all. All right, so page 29.
Thank you, Edwin. Our next request is from Tarrant County. They are seeking 2 years of mental health funding at $1,542,800 to establish the Tarrant County Managed Assigned Counsel program for mental health cases. This includes 4 full-time employees, 1 chief defender, 1 deputy chief, 1 mental health case manager, and 1 administrative assistant. And the recommendation is to work with Tarrant County to refine the grant proposal and revisit this at our August board meeting. Edwin?
Thank you. So Tarrant County is one of the big urban jurisdictions, I think the only big urban jurisdiction in the state that doesn't have any kind of institutionalized indigent defense program. I do want to commend them for having a very robust pretrial program and indigent defense coordinators. They've done very well on the kind of front end processes, but they don't have a MAC or a PD that in the jurisdiction. So we think that the county would benefit remarkably from having a MAC, even focused narrowly on mentally ill defendants. The proposal just wasn't quite there. A number of reviewers pointed out questions with some of the procedures that were laid out. I think there's a kernel of a great idea here. And so we're proposing to continue to work with the county to refine the proposal and with the plan to bring it back to you in August for action. And so with that, and it did come to us a little bit late, or at least it got on our radar a little bit late, which kind of explains that we didn't really have a lot of opportunity to work with the county to develop the idea. Jeff or Scott, do you want to add anything?
No, I think I'm good. Scott?
Nope, I agree.
All right, so we don't have any action proposed on that. So if there's no further discussion, we'll move on. Page 30.
All right, our last request is out of Travis County. Travis County is seeking 2 years of mental health grant funding at $375,820 to expand the Capital Area Private Defender Service mental health case management team by adding 2 full-time case managers. And while reviewers support Travis County's request and note that the case managers' roles were narrowly defined and that the program could be scaled back, so the recommendation is to not award a mental health grant award to Travis County at this time. Edwin?
Yeah, so again, I think, again, the biggest consideration here is the scarcity of available resources in this space in the context of what else we've done for Travis County in recent years, including on the mental health front. I don't doubt that these positions would be helpful to the program, and that pretty much everything that's been proposed would be helpful in their respective jurisdictions, and we're just grappling with the limited funds and what we can do. So this was down on the priority list for those considerations, but could be revisited down the road with a new batch of funding if they're open to that. So yeah, we don't have any recommendation on this at this time. If there are no further questions on this one, that really concludes our pandemic and mental health requests. Thank you all very much for your review and attention to all these and the time that you've spent today helping us sort through them.
So Edwin, I have a quick question for you. And maybe this I'm not quite understanding, but so if somebody asks for, whatever, $10 million and you give them $5 million and they asked for, 30 workers, do you give us the scale or give them the scaled down FTEs or do the individual counties have to figure that out?
So the way that we've structured these recommendations, we're kind of capping the dollar amount that would be awarded, and our intention would be to work with the jurisdiction closely to scale down the FTEs and use those resources in the way, for a smaller footprint program that would do the most good. So yeah, I mean, we're not narrowly in these cases narrowly saying you have to have 9 instead of 8 FTEs or whatever, but we're working off the dollar amount of the budget and then kind of working back from that to with the jurisdiction to see what makes the most sense. So there's a fair amount of work to do for these ones that have been modified to sort through those details. Does that help?
So, yeah, no, that does help. So with that, do you work with the chief public defender or do you work with the commissioner's court?
So I think what we would do is work with the stakeholders. We would sort out most of the footprint of the proposed program prior to the hiring of the chief. I think we would have to settle on a scaled down plan prior to the hiring of the chief. So, Scott and his team on the improvement team here at TADC, who are the ones who have developed the planning studies and are experts at staffing models and developing budgets for new programs, they would be, I think, at the point from our shop, working with the county stakeholders to take what was originally proposed and scale it down and propose, a phased approach.
And Edwin, in that situation, who are the county stakeholders? The commissioner's court only?
Well, I think that's a good question, Judge. I think that it's whoever the county wants it to be. I think we would be working with the judiciary, with yourself as a stakeholder, the commissioner's court, and I think the county can put proffer stakeholders to sit down at the table with us. I don't think we have a set list, but we could certainly talk offline about what makes the most sense there.
Right. And so that could be like the group that made the presentation to Commissioner's Court. We could be the stakeholders on that, and then they move forward over to the Commissioner's Court once it's kind of decided. Could that happen?
Yes. I think, ultimately the authorized official under our grant rules is the constitutional county judge. However, the constitutional county judge would be signing to accept an award that we would be working with you and other stakeholders to refine and scale down to meet existing resources. So I wouldn't say that we would just be kind of dumping the dollar amount on the feet of the commissioner's court and saying, okay, here's your award. We would kind of work with a broader group of stakeholders to come up with a model that makes sense and that would do the most good. And then that would be the basis for the final award to that the county judge would sign off on.
All right. Thank you, Edwin. I needed a 101 refresher course on this. Thank you.
Yeah, it's, we haven't been in this position a lot because, fortunately, we very often are in the position to say yes to full proposals with some modest changes that we might suggest. And we're just grappling with more scarcity this go around. So it's a bigger problem to tackle this time around.
Thank you.
I have a question that's related to this. So if a county got a scaled back grant over, both years, and in terms of, the motion language, it talks about a 2-year grant at a certain amount as itemized above. If a county, say, for example, didn't spend all of the money that is outlined or, granted in year one, for example, and, there's $200,000 left, compared to the grant amount. Can that money just automatically go over to year two? They have to come back, right? They're still gonna have to come back for a year 2 grant amount.
No, we're
No.
issuing
Okay.
we're issuing 2-year grant awards, so they have that flexibility. And then, of
Okay.
course, if a county doesn't spend all of its resources in the 2-year period, they can request that they have additional time. They can request an extension of the grant term. But Scott, I think this is helpful for addressing your question, Judge Maderi. We're going to be issuing 2-year grant awards with a 2-year grant period, and the salary amounts will be for the total amount that's available to the county for 2 years, et cetera. And so there's some flexibility about how that drawdown actually happens. However, we would be working with each of the jurisdictions to develop a plan. Obviously, plans like budgets are starting points, and then implementation is another thing. But we would be working with the jurisdictions to develop a plan for how that spend down will go on over the couple of years. And I think to your point, Scott, there is some flexibility there. Our interest, the interest of the United States Congress, the interest of the Texas legislature is to get this help to the counties in a way that they can use it and deploy it. And so I think that's our guiding principle, is that we want to make sure that once these funds are offered, that they can be put to work in the way proposed in order to do some good. And that guides the kind of decision-making on our part.
Edwin, is there a time limit on when the ARPA funds need to be spent?
So there's a time, as we understand it from working with the Governor's Criminal Justice Division, that's the kind of conduit for these resources. We need to award the funds within this biennium. So we actually have quite a bit of time before the end of this biennium, the end of fiscal year 23. In terms of the spend down, or when those funds are consumed, really we're limited by standard state grant making awards that there's a 3-year fiscal year window that we have to spend down within. So if awards are approved, so taking that into account, the very latest that we could extend an award with these particular funds, I believe, would be through the end of FY24. Let me see. Yes, through the end of FY24. So, so we're, our special RFA was designed to get counties moving forward quickly, and we're doing our best to get those resources deployed. But that's kind of the outer limit of when we have to spend them down.
Thank you.
And also, Edwin, I have a question on the step downs. If there's a recommendation in how many others we had that there was a recommendation of a step down,
Mhm.
is that a guarantee step down? Like we go whatever county it was, I think. I know it's Nueces, but there's a couple others where there is a recommendation for the 80-60, 40-20. Is that kind of you can count on that?
Yes, I would say that you would see those step down awards in future years, like after the 2-year period, show up in the slate of continuing grants, like you saw at the beginning of today's meeting book.
Right.
So we have a number of grants. Some of them are sustainability grants. Some of them are 4-year step down grants. And after the initial, grant award, they appear there until they're completed. So they're not, while we make the awards on a fiscal year basis, year by year, the commission is essentially adopting a funding plan to proceed across the 4-year step down. And we just formalize the awards year by year.
I got you. Thank you, Edwin.
I think
that's all we have. And that's the other. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Go ahead.
I just wanted to circle back to the comment that Jeff made. So we've been focusing on the specific special RFA that the board authorized, the mental health and the pandemic related funds. Because this was very voluminous material to work up, we have a handful of small indigent defense coordinator grants out of our regular grant program, if you will, that we'll present for actions. I think there are 3 of those we'll present on the 9th, very straightforward. We have a handful of modification requests where counties are asking for increasing their current grant amount to some extent. We're continuing to work those up for the 9th. And then, of course, as Jeff indicated, the OLS update and supplemental grant request we anticipate bringing back to you on the 9th.
Well, I'd like to jump in also and just say, this was yeoman's work from TIDC. And I know that, Nueces County's team was, calling Scott all the time and working through with Edwin as well. And I know that they opened up, to every other county that had questions. So, I know the amount of time that Nueces County called TIDC. And so if every other county did even half of that, they've just done an outstanding job. So from, this committee, I just want to commend Edwin and Scott and Wesley and Jeff and everyone on here. So thank you very much.
Good job.
Thank you, Jess.
Thank you. We're happy
I want to say thanks too, because you really had to kind of shift gears after the last grants and reporting committee, after Chief Justice Raddick said, hey, why don't we look at the overall picture? And you just did it without slowing down. And also the External Grants Review Committee. I hope they know how much we appreciate their work.
I'll definitely convey that, and we'll be sure to recognize their contributions again. They've been very supportive and helpful to our efforts. And I also really appreciate the committee's advice to hit the pause button and allow all the counties that might be interested in moving forward the opportunity to do so, because I think we have really come up with a funding plan that's very thoughtful and will do the most good. So thank you all for all of your support and work.
Good job.
We will be in touch and see you again on the 9th.
Okay,
All right.
bye.
Thank you. Bye.